All right, man. So we got a super fascinating article here. So we're getting a deep dive on what's going on with Kamala Harris. And in this video, I'm going to try to convince you of a central thesis here, and you're going to find out what that is. So this article says, inside the fast-moving launch of Kamala Harris for president. So in this article, it basically breaks down what Kamala Harris is doing, and it gives us some really interesting tidbits. Now, the central thesis I actually want to convince you of is that Kamala Harris is a bit of a wild card. She's not exactly beholden to anybody or dependent on strategists or any of these kinds of things. She's kind of just this wild card. And I'm going to try to show you guys a bunch of things here to say that. But this article says, 3 weeks into her presidential run was the first time the Biden campaign's pollsters, now hers, held a deep dive call with Kamala Harris's inner circle to discuss what she's been saying on the stump. Over the line came a lot of praise, but also some suggested tweaks. First, said veteran Democratic numbers man Geoff Garin, summarizing their analysis, stop saying, quote, "we're not going back." It wasn't focused enough on the future, he argued. Second, lay off all the, quote, weird talk, too negative. Harris's advisors listened. They considered the arguments. They decided to stick with what the crowds were chanting in the arenas. So this is pretty interesting. So as you guys know, the "we're not going back" thing was really popular at the rallies. And then Tim Walz obviously popularizing the whole weird attack line. These are like uber popular, super popular, taking off like wildfire. The "we're not going back" thing I think seemed kind of organic too and genuine in terms of it was like genuinely kind of created. It wasn't like forced on anybody, which is pretty interesting. It just seemed very, very real. So basically the Biden pollsters are pretty much telling her, hey, like, don't do this, but they're like, we're just going to stick with the flow, basically. Goes on here further. This is when advisors who had been on the call briefed the vice president on the suggestions. According to CNN's conversation with close to a dozen people involved with internal campaign decisions, she told them she wasn't going to listen to the pollsters herself and would instead trust the instinct she had buried under self-doubt for so long. Harris has shocked even people close to her with how she's been coming across in just 4 weeks since she became a presidential candidate. Many political obsessives who have largely written off the vice president can't understand how a woman whose early struggles they still keenly remember is now projecting as succinct and punchy, comfortable on stage and in her own skin. Part of this is a strategic decision to limit her appearances and hold off from sitting for an interview so that her only major moment without a teleprompter or aides first editing a video was on the tarmac at Andrews Air Force Base as she greeted the Americans returning home in President Joe Biden's multilateral prison swap. And so it talks about how like that actually ended up being kind of like a downside for her, even that one moment. And so it says, and while several Democratic officials told CNN privately that the turnaround for a politician whose weaknesses haven't magically disappeared may be setting the party up for devastation if she stumbles, Harris isn't just feeding off the burst of Democratic good feelings that followed Biden's exit. She's feeling a sense of liberation, campaigning for herself rather than calibrating around Biden. So keep in mind also, by the way, back in 2020, or slightly like 2021, I should say, in the first year of the presidency under Joe Biden, they were actually fighting with each other because Kamala Harris felt like Biden was actually effing her over. And that was basically because she felt like he was basically shunning her to the border. And the reason why was because he feared this was actually going to happen. He feared that she was actually going to usurp him. He was fearful. He was so old too, and he was kind of, there was some kind of sentiment, at least with some people, that he was a one-term president, but I think he was just dead set on running again, and so he was actually really, really fearful of her overtaking her. In the end, it looks like he actually ended up choosing her, but so there was some kind of like really difficult time for her. Then her 2020 campaign was a complete and utter disaster. It had one good moment, which was in the debate with Biden. That was literally it. Reports are saying that the actual campaign itself was a complete disaster internally, disorganization, dysfunction, horrible campaign top to bottom, essentially. So everyone's really shocked at this, and there's the Times reporting, I should have even pulled it up for you, but the Times reporting basically says that she was actually prepared for this. And I did the video that I showed you guys, the clip of Nancy Pelosi, where she says that the plan was not for Kamala Harris to be the next person, which confirmed with what AOC had said. Remember, AOC came out and said, hey guys, I'm in these private meetings. I wanted to tell you guys publicly, if you think that the idea is let's coup Biden and then replace him with Kamala Harris, that's not the convo going on. And so Pelosi's comments on the New Yorker podcast confirm she was not the plan. She actually says she did that herself. She was the one. And so the Times reporting goes into how she had a list ready. She was prepared. It was for 2028, though, but because of the circs, it kicked in for 2024, and pretty much it was too hard for anybody to come in against her, basically. But I also think a lot of it was just voters were just kind of set on Kamala at that point anyways. I think the Democratic voters are very heavily like kind of monarchy based now, where it's just kind of like whoever you know is who you go with, even though there's like a really great roster of all Andy Beshear, Tim Walz, all these people who are all potential great options to run for president. Who knows? We could see, maybe there's another guy we don't even know comes on the scene. You get like kind of like a Barack Obama or a Bill Clinton, kind of relatively unknown people, Arkansas governor, Illinois junior senator or whatever, just come on the scene, break through, and kabloom, just get through, right? Democratic voters don't believe in that anymore. They want someone to be in line for the monarchy, right? That's what they're looking for. So I think it was kind of more that. But she was prepared. So what's going on here is she has been prepared, and she is not exactly beholden to like the establishment, her advisors, pollsters, anybody like that. So it's saying Harris is also reaping the benefits from years of a quietly revamped internal operation, a small circle of advisors. She tends to meet with at her dining room table at the Naval Observatory, which remains the nexus of power. Sounds like something from StarCraft. While the staff still in the headquarters Biden established in Wilmington, Delaware, manages the campaign operations. Those are the people she talks to. Those are the ones who, while the Biden campaign wasn't much testing what his running mate should say, were coming up with their own debate prep plans, which were already underway by the time Biden took the stage for his. So she has her own squad. She's been kind of building up for this moment. She's been preparing for this moment. So it's pretty interesting to see. And so she's kind of figuring out how to get into these interviews. Also, keep in mind this article here. It says Harris blindsided Democrats with no tax on tips plan, again showing she's kind of low-key taking the party for herself, and it's going to be pretty interesting because all those corporate Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, all those people who are the party bosses in the party, are they going to kind of regret their move to coup Biden? Because Kamala Harris right now is taking the party for herself. This is de facto right now the Kamala Harris party right now, and she's controlling the motion. So she comes out and says it wasn't a Democrat plan for no tax on tips. She just says, fuck it. I should have said F it. Sorry. My apologies. But she's just like, hey, I'm coming out with no tax on tips. She does not give an F. She does not care. So low-key, she's kind of just taking the party for herself. And so we can just kind of see here, she's doing this, and so I don't know if you guys saw this, but this is a video clip as well where she's kind of responding to this. And another also piece of evidence as well is also the housing plan that she releases, where she's talking about housing building, right? Like building homes. Typically when it comes to housing policy for Democrats, almost always it's rent control. So she seems to be kind of a wild card even on the policy positions, and typically encouraging houses to be built is typically kind of a sort of centrist or sort of bipartisan idea, to like a normie kind of idea, as opposed to rent control can kind of be more like liberal leaning or left leaning of a policy position that's supported. So she's definitely kind of this wild card who's kind of all over the place, and she's just saying, yeah, pollsters, all you people, F you guys, we're done. And so I was talking about how they were deciding, like, what kind of interviews to do and all these kinds of things. And so there's just been this kind of building right now. So she's been preparing for this moment, and she's kind of just going with the flow too. And also her pick of Walz. There was some Walz support for, from the establishment, like Nancy Pelosi, and Joe Biden said he liked Walz, but he preferred Josh Shapiro. But Shapiro had really deep ties with the Obama campaign because he was actually a Pennsylvania state representative who actually stood by Obama when the entire establishment in the Democratic Party was behind Hillary Clinton. He never forgot that. All the advisors a lot of advice she has is from the 2008 Obama campaign. So again, she's kind of like this sort of wild card. And so I think this election is a vibes election. And so more than anything else, I think that it's going to end up benefiting her because it's all about the vibes, bro. Like a lot of stuff doesn't really matter. It just kind of comes down to the vibes. And so she's kind of embracing the vibes. And I think for this election, that's the way to go.